Hello, LinkedIn family and friends. It's Dave Freedman here, and it's time for another edition of Monday Motivation. Get fired up. Well, I am really fired up this morning, and not because it's beautiful outside, but because I've got an amazing story that's going to help you transform your life. So sit back, relax, get ready to be inspired and fired up to live your best life, because here it comes. So many years ago, there was a king that was getting very much up in age and did not have that many years left in his life. Unfortunately for the king, he did not have any children to leave his throne to. So the king decided that he would build a brand new palace with a puzzle on the door to serve as a test. And he would invite all the young men from all across the lands to come to try and solve the puzzle on this door. And solving this puzzle would allow them to open the door to this newly built palace that would become theirs, and they would ultimately become the heir to the throne upon the king's passing. Well, many weeks and months went by as hundreds and thousands of young men traveled miles and miles from across all the lands to try and solve this puzzle on the palace door and push it open to become the new heir. Well, after all this time, finally, despite months and months going by, it was down to 3 final young men to try and solve this puzzle and open the door. Well, the king said to the one young man, "Would you like to try next?" And the young man said to the king that he would allow the other 2 young men to go first and he would go last. Well, these other 2 young men were known as the very brightest across all the surrounding lands. And each of them literally spent days and days trying to solve this puzzle so they could open the door. And eventually, both of them gave up. Finally, the 3rd young man approached the door, looked at it up and down, and then simply pushed the door open. The king looked at the young man and smiled and said, "How did you know just to push the door open?" And the young man said that after watching the other 2 for days and days trying to solve this puzzle on the door so they could open it, he realized that perhaps there really was no puzzle at all, and he just simply pushed the door open. And the king said, "Congratulations to the young man. This new palace is yours, and you'll become the heir to my throne upon my passing." And I think this story teaches a really great lesson, because in life, so often we see problems that confront us as these big mountains and daunting tasks. And we try all sorts of things and overcomplicate them. And the more we try, just the more entangled we become within this problem. And in reality, many problems, when we look back at them, turn out that they're really pretty easy to solve. We just turn them into these big, insurmountable mountains that make it almost impossible to try and solve. And there's a great quote by Dr. Seuss. It's one of my favorites, and it goes like this: "Sometimes the problems are complicated and the answers are simple." And I wrote a law of success about this, and it ties in very nicely to this approach that the young man used, and it's called the law of smallness. And it goes like this: conquering a mountain is nothing more than climbing a series of small and manageable hills, one after another. And so remember that whenever you're faced with some problem that appears like it's some mountain to you, oftentimes the problem, although it may look complicated, is yet very simple to solve. And any problem, almost without exception, can be broken down into small and manageable pieces. And another law of success of mine that I wrote that this young man also applied to solving this problem is what I call the law of difference. And it goes like this: great minds don't think alike. Great minds think differently. So remember that when you're confronted with a problem, break it down into small and manageable pieces, and don't follow the path that others are using to solve the problem to no avail. Instead, step back and think just a little bit differently, and you'll be surprised how often and fast you get the solution. And that's your Monday motivation. I hope you are fired up. You have greatness within you, and you can make magic happen. Now get it done.